And then in the end, I would like to give you an opportunity to ask any questions you have of me. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. So first, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I am Alexandra Snow. I have been working in the hospitality business since I was 14 years old. I started as a housekeeper, and I moved my way up to front desk supervisor and stuff like that. The hotel that I worked for had a banquet hall next to it, so I've also assisted with catering events and stuff like that. Throughout my collegiate career, I am a communications major, so I've taken many courses in management and problem solving and conflict resolution and stuff like that. Also, I was an event an event staff worker when I was up at college. That was more athletics as opposed to banquets, but it was still, I had practice setting up, taking down, and working events there as well.
Awesome. Could you tell me a little bit about your 3 greatest strengths you've developed either through education or through your work experience?
I think my 3 greatest strengths have got to be problem solving, interpersonal relations, and I would think conflict resolution. Problem solving and conflict resolution are very close together, but what I mean by conflict resolution is like I'm able to actually solve the conflict, whereas problem solving is more of a thinking strategically, seeing the problem before it occurs and solving it before it might arise. Also, interpersonal communications, to problem solve and to resolve conflict you got to communicate with others, you got to articulate what you are thinking, how you are feeling, what is the best way to figure out the problems. So I would say those are my greatest strengths.
Great. Those are 3 great strengths. Do you think you could give me an example of where you used all 3 in a situation?
Sure. So when I worked at the Cress Event Center in Green Bay, we had a person who came in with too large of a display. It was National History Day, and so that's when kids come in and they have like a big display that they give, and they give a presentation, and their display was a little bit too wide for all the doors, and as they rolled it in, I saw it, and so without skipping a beat, I went up to them, I showed them the way around so it didn't have to go through as many doorways. It also went down the loading dock, and I showed them the back way down to the arena where the presentations were to be given, and the mother, who was by herself with her kid, was very frazzled, and I helped calm her nerves and help the little kids set up so they weren't rushed in any way.
All right. Perfect. Now that I've heard a little bit about your greatest strengths, could you tell me your 3 greatest weaknesses?
I think my 3 greatest weaknesses would have to be writing, time management, and procrastination. Now, time management and procrastination kind of go together too, but what I mean by time management is I like to focus on one thing before moving on, and that also leads into procrastination where all of a sudden at the end of the day I have 5 things to do when I've only been doing, 2. But I've been working on that, and it makes me, and since I've been working on it, it has made me better to stay focused, to schedule out my day a little bit better so I don't have to worry about it being 5 o'clock and me still having to make 18 phone calls at the end of the day. Also, writing, one of my other weaknesses. I have taken many courses throughout my collegiate career to improve my writing skills, and I do believe that they have been getting better. Writing is generally my weakness because sometimes I'm not as elaborative as what I should be, but like I said, I have been working on that, and my writing is pretty easy to read and should be okay. If anybody has any questions about my writing, I would like to have them come to me and ask me so I can communicate verbally, which is more of my strength.
All right. Could you give me a specific example of when you may have overcome one of your weaknesses, either in a work experience or a classroom experience?
With time management, I've had multiple group presentations all in the same week. So like I said, I took my schedule and I planned out hour by hour what exactly needed to be done to make sure that I was prepared for all 5 presentations, and so that I could give the most I could give to all of my groups at the same time.
Perfect. Great answer. Now that I've gotten to know a little bit better about your personality and your strengths and your weaknesses and how you overcome them, I'd like to inquire a little bit further about your education. So, if you could go back and relive your education, what changes would you make?
Well, I graduated in I'm going to be graduating in 3 years. So throughout my whole education, I've been taking a lot of the maximum number of courses I can each semester. And it sometimes was very stressful on me. So I would say go back to my freshman year and maybe try to schedule the hard classes throughout all of the 3 years instead, because my last year it was very overloaded with a lot of upper levels, which made it hard for me to keep everything organized and on time.
So you said you graduated in 3 years. What was your motivation to graduating in 3 years rather than the usual 4?
Well, graduating in 3 years, besides the financial benefits of graduating in 3 years, I do have an older sister, and she also graduated in 3 years. So it was a lot of myself being very competitive and very driven and self-motivated. I didn't want to be lesser than my sister, so my competitive side came out and said, well, if my sister can do it, so can I. So I really pushed myself so I could be better than her, pretty much.
All right, you have a competitive side. That's good to hear. All right, so I'm guessing that maybe one of the most valuable lessons you learned was that you wanted to spread out the hard classes. If that wasn't the most valuable lesson you learned throughout your education, what was?
Nope, you are correct in saying that my most valuable lesson would be to spread out the difficultness.
Great. All right, so next, the last question that I have about your education is, how has your communications degree from Green Bay put you above the rest of the applicants for this job, as opposed to people who've had other majors?
My communications degree has taught me to articulate well, to problem solve, look ahead. I also, like I said before, I've also had classes in managerial effectiveness, so I have gotten a taste of managing as other business and management majors might have gotten. I also have taken classes in interpersonal relationships, so I can make sure that all the brides are happy when they come in. So, nerves for wedding days, they get really high and really crazy, and I will be able to take what I've learned from my communication classes, help keep them relaxed and keep them happy so that they don't get all stressed out on their big day.
All right. So, Going back to one of your greatest weaknesses and what you had just explained about how the interpersonal communication with making the brides happy, if you were put into a situation where you had multiple events happening in 1 week, so you were under a lot of pressure and under a lot of stress, and you had 3 brides that came to you all within an hour, and they said, like, one of them was complaining about how the cake isn't correct, and another was complaining about how she didn't have everything ready, and her hair wasn't going to be right, and her nails and everything wasn't going to be ready, and it was her day of the wedding. And another bride was coming to you asking about, well, why haven't we gotten information about the reservation, or why haven't we gotten information about the band? How would you handle that situation if they were all coming at you at once?
Well, first I would make sure that they all understood that there were other weddings in our venue at the same time, so that they knew that I might not always be able to give them my undivided attention, because that's important to make sure that they know that going into everything. Then, whoever came to me first, I would try to solve that or delegate that problem to one of my staff workers, and then go one by one, trying to get to the root of the problem, and then to delegate it off to somebody if I do not have time myself to do it.
All right. Perfect. All right. So the last question that I'd like to ask regarding the actual event planning is, what would your ideal situation and your ideal job be?
My ideal job would be able to get brides who are considering our venue and to give them a tour and to sell our venue to them, and then take them through every step of the way, to start from the sale of our venue to taste testing, to the cake testing, to the actual setup of the facility, to the day of, to make sure that, like I said, their stress level isn't too high and everything like that, and to make sure that her day is actually the day that she had been dreaming of since she was 5 years old.
All right. So how would you describe your ideal manager or your ideal boss?
My ideal boss would be for them to understand that I am capable of doing everything, and that them to understand that every decision that I have made throughout the whole process is well thought out and well constructed, and if they have questions, to come to me, not necessarily in an accusatory way, but just to ask what my reasoning was behind it so that I could defend myself. And then also to inspire me to want to move up within the company.
So you would appreciate somebody who would like to challenge you?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what would be your ideal interaction with your fellow employees? Would you prefer to work alone, or would you prefer to work in a group?
I think I like an even balance. There are specific jobs where I just want to be alone and I need to be by myself and be in my little tunnel to make sure that I can get everything done and everything is accounted for. But there is also the specific, like setup and everything like that. I can't set up a whole venue by myself. So then I would like to work in the group to make sure that everything gets done on time.
So if you were working by yourself, and say take the situation that I had put you in before with multiple people, and you had said that if you couldn't answer the question, you would contact somebody else and get them in contact with somebody who could, how would you go about interacting with your other employees and saying, hey, I really need your help, would you be able to help out this bride? How would you go about doing that?
Well, depending on the different modes of communication we have the day of the weddings, I've seen some venues who have walkie-talkies, other venues who just use phones. I would somehow walkie-talkie them or phone them and be like, hey, can you come to my office? I have one of our brides here that I feel you might be able to help a little bit better than me. And then once they have gotten to my office, or are available, I would explain the situation a little bit more, introduce the bride and them so that they can go off and get the problem solved themselves.
So if their reaction was, oh, Alex, I'm really sorry, like I have a lot of other things going on, what would your reaction be?
I would try to either find somebody else or maybe see or think about how long it would take and try to do it myself then.
Great. Great. Those were very effective, very communicated answers. And now we are at the end of the interview, and I would like to give you the opportunity to ask me any questions.
The one main question I have for you is, on average, on a fall Saturday, do you normally have 3 brides, or do you generally only have 1, or do you double book often, I guess? That's my question.
Well, we are a very highly demanded facility, and we do have a lot of opportunities that brides find very attractive. So oftentimes, we don't try and schedule more than 3 in a day because of the timing issue that the receptions have to happen at a certain time of day, and usually people like them to happen at night. We do have 3 different rooms that are available for the receptions, so we generally try to not book over that unless they're specifically going to have the receptions at different times of the day, or if they're going to use one of our wedding planners but have the reception outside or elsewhere. But we generally only have 3. That's the number that we like to have because then our entire facility is being used, but everything can still be managed.
Okay, that's all the questions I have for you then.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your time. And as I said earlier, we'll let you know in a few weeks if you have made it to the second round of interviews. We do have a few more interviews that we need to conduct, but you will definitely know within the next week if you will be asked to come back.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
I totally forgot to tell you earlier that we were